Good, good morning. I hope you can hear me. Um, can I just say one thing first of all? I'm working at a standing desk. So if during various parts of the synod I'm not in the picture, if you happen to see my little box, it's not because I've gone off to do some gardening. It's because I've just sat down. So I will be present even if not visible. What I want to say has kind of crystallized for me in the course of this past week, particularly because of some experiences I had on Wednesday, and it's going to sound a bit like a day in the life of the bishop, but I thought I would use the two particular events that happened on Wednesday as if you like, a kind of a lens to express what I had intended to express anyway. And there's always the chance that telling a couple of stories might be rather more effective than just making a list of points. So you'll remember that about a year ago, we started a process in the diocese of discernment during, I think it was after the first lockdown, as there was a bit of easing, listening to each other, listening to the Spirit, asking, where have we seen God at work? You'll perhaps remember that Mike and I, for the period that we could meet with one another physically, came out and visited various deaneries and had, I think, quite extraordinary meetings and conversations where we were seeking a discernment about where we had seen God through that first lockdown, and certainly in the course of the conversations, multitude conversations since, what emerged in that time has continued to be the case. And the two things that emerged really clearly that I spoke about at the synod, the October synod last year, was that we'd seen God at work in our deepening faith and in our deepening service, or perhaps I should say in deepening our faith and deepening our service. Deepening faith, deepening service. Now, of course, not unsurprisingly, these are two strands in the growing in God process, growing in depth and growing in influence. But what has been striking to so many of us is just how clearly these two have continued to stand out. It is as if God is telling us something. One of the things I suspect God is telling us a year on is, I know you are all worn out, so keep it simple. So, the day in the life of the bishop. This Wednesday just gone, I had lunch in one of the schools in the diocese, one where each year I go to confirm an amazing group of youngsters, a different group each year, obviously, and a group that generally numbers something around 16, 18, 20 a year. This year, because of the restrictions from the pandemic, it is a mere 12. It's each year been the largest confirmation I do. And I was having lunch with the youngsters that I am due to confirm this coming Tuesday, in order to get to know them, to listen to them, so that I am not a stranger to them and they're not a stranger to me. A practice which I would welcome for any of you in preparation for a confirmation. We sat in a circle, so the 12 youngsters, myself and the chaplain, sat in a circle, and they talked about their faith. They are aged between about 13, 14, 17, 18, that range. And every year when I meet with the group, I ask, why have you chosen to be confirmed? Nobody is making you be confirmed. Why have you chosen it? And they always tell me. And each year is a bit the same and a bit different. The two things that struck me about this group, probably more than half, first of all, spoke about the importance of family. Now, that's not unusual, the importance of their family in the development of their faith. and them themselves reaching that point where they now wanted to make the commitment personally and themselves. What was particularly striking was that among those who spoke about family, a significant number spoke about the importance of their grandparents, not their parents. Their parents did not necessarily share the faith of their own parents. Something had happened for these young people that had enabled them to experience the faith of their grandparents, and that had drawn them in. The second thing that struck me was the slightly smaller group who did not cite family, but somehow they had kind of thought their way to faith, something that I've encountered before in this same process in the school. They'd got there not quite under their own steam, but are under their own steam in the sense that they hadn't had the family context to support the development of their faith. They'd been drawn to faith through encounters at school, indeed through the work of their, I would publicly say, their extraordinary chaplain, or through other routes, which included studying philosophy and religion. Something had got them on that path, and they'd encountered in that journey intelligent faith that had drawn them in. All of the youngsters, when I asked them why, would say, because it's interesting, or I was interested in it. They think Christianity is interesting. And that's what had set them on or reinforced them on this journey. I asked them, what did they mean by interesting? They answered very quickly, the Bible, the teachings of Jesus, and thinking about God. By now, in this conversation, which lasted about an hour, they were wanting to tell this stranger who had come to their school a bit more. Christianity, they said, gave you community. It was a family where you could go and talk about anything. You felt connected to each other and to God. Belief in God gave you security and support. And the confirmation classes, they said, were helping deepen their understanding of God. And then towards the end of our hour, they got to the heart of the matter, to two words that had apparently emerged for them and around which all of them had coalesced in their understanding of what Christianity meant. The Christian faith, they told me, is love and forgiveness. What do you mean by forgiveness? I asked. And one 17-year-old said, it means being always given a second chance. God will always forgive us and is always looking out for us. That hour for me was an hour of deepening my faith. Listening to these extraordinary young people who were choosing this immense step of confirmation, listening to them talk about how their faith was deepened, enriched, and enlivened my faith in God, and my faith in young people. And essentially that happened because I and they were listening to God and to one another. Each of us here in this synod has continued in one way or another to have some experience of deepening faith through listening more carefully to God and to one another through this hugely demanding time of uncertainty, anxiety, and grief. The youngsters underlined for me the importance of relationships, of intelligent, wise faith, and of course, in their context, of good, engaged, godly worship. That is deepening faith. And for me, that's an invaluable steer as we seek to develop new arrangements or patterns of worship, recognizing the vital need to maintain online access and the fruit that has borne in these months. and to attend to our own continuing development in faith, something that's been so important to people through this time, particularly in the deepening of prayer. So I returned from the school visit, a bit of a gallop, on Wednesday afternoon to join and chair an online symposium, a summit it was called, with a couple of hundred people from the healthcare sector, from community groups, churches, and I know some of you were present, and various other groups. Been organised by the Suffolk and North East Integrated Care System, which is the body that connects all the health and care providers in our region. Looking forward, the gathering was entitled, "How Do We Heal?" For all of us taking part in this, it was an incredibly moving and powerful event. It was about healing, but because it was about healing, it was also about hope. Words like compassion, courage, care, listening, kindness wove through the whole event and through every element of that event. One person spoke about how we can help older and more vulnerable people re-engage with society, and how the well-being of all needs to be the heart of all that we do now. Another spoke about how that voice at the end of the telephone has been a lifeline to people lonely and isolated, and how, as restrictions have eased, people are wanting to find out that those that they used to meet up with week by week or travel together on the community bus on a regular basis, they want to find out that they're all right. Have they made it through this time? Others spoke about the needs we all have for meaning and purpose, and the need to be heard, with people making time to listen, a frequent theme throughout the conference, because listening is the key to the healing we all need. And we heard the warning that it is only as we begin to emerge that we will recognize how deeply we've been affected and what a strain this time has been. That is the point at which we need to be able to ask for help. We talked about individuals healing, communities healing, organizations healing. One speaker believed that in the health and care sector, he had seen the death of the policy of competition, to be replaced, he said, by much stronger collaboration and cooperation across agencies, public bodies, and voluntary organizations, including churches, committed to the healing of individuals and communities. Many of us, of course, have seen this throughout the last 16 months. Churches have stepped up in deepening service for their wider communities in a huge range of ways, and have done so in so many cases in cooperation, in partnership with all sorts of other groups. The newly developing relationship between our churches and the Suffolk Community Foundation is one of the many manifestations of that. We are deepening service in collaboration with others, showing and sharing the love of Christ in a world desperate for healing. And we also heard about those communities and individuals who've experienced pain and isolation through this time, including minority ethnic communities whose isolation and pain as the virus has taken a disproportionate toll, has taken a huge toll on them as a community. And yet we also heard about the courage that various people within those communities had taken to ensure that they remain connected, and that indeed the vaccination program is embraced more and more fully. The pervasive needs we heard of people with mental illness, a group that is much more than a group, because the challenges of mental health we now know are so pervasive and include many of us. And we heard about those in deepest poverty, for those for whom this time has been one of even deepening poverty and isolation. There was a powerful account of the experience of rough sleepers. The theme, of course, is that no one should be left behind, and that healing is for everyone, including across the divisions in our communities and wider society. And over again, we heard, pay attention, listen to each other, and listen to each other as individuals, look at and treat each person as a person, not as a condition or a state or a label. As I reflected on this afternoon, I realized there was not a word spoken or an image shown. There were a number of films that were presented as part of a film competition. Not an image or a film shown that didn't convey that fundamental reality that we all are precious children of God. There was not a word spoken or an image or a film that did not echo the values of the kingdom. It was a most extraordinary experience, revealing both the profound and prolonged need for healing we all face, and the extraordinary gifts people have to share with each other to be agents and agencies of healing. And of course, as the church, this is our work. This is our calling, to be agents of healing. It is Christ's ministry given to us as Christ's body. The challenge is immense, but our experience of the last year or more is that God gives us the strength, the means, and the opportunities. It is who we are. It is who we are to be, deepening in service. So deepening faith, deepening service, the church's vocation right now. And if I can add an obvious footnote to what I've been saying before we say, well, we can't possibly do that. The invitation, the Spirit's invitation, is simply to join in what God is already up to. Excuse me. As we come to the end of this triennium of the Synod, we can look back and thank God for God's hand guiding us in this direction. We saw this clearly in our last Synod when we were so energized by the presentation about being political, and I'm immensely grateful to Tony Redman and his team for their continuing work. Anna Hughes will say a little more about the other themes that we identified early on in this triennium, and I know those will continue to be developed. And today we continue in the political theme as we look at the primary challenge of the environmental crisis and our active response to be agents of Christ's healing in this. I want to thank all those who have served in this triennium, recognizing that some of you will return re-elected and others will be stepping down. But whether we are on Synod or not, God's call on us is the same, to deepen in faith and to deepen in service. Thank you.